Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So,
One Piece chapter 1112 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
It jumped up a notch. Seems accurate. Sometimes you just need to say less. Look, there's a lot of things to have an opinion on, right? We've talked a lot about this being reminiscent of Sabaody, and it definitely felt that way in the chapter. Are the Strats going to lose? I personally don't think so, but we could have a conversation about it. But I feel like that there's one thing that just is definitively true based on this chapter. The Gorosei arriving all at once was a problem. Right now, Luffy is a Yonko. I know that that's contentious. A lot of people are like, yeah, he's a Yonko, but he is an actual Yonko. He just defeated Kaido, okay? Technicality aside, and regardless of that, within Egghead, Luffy possessed enough allies for it to really be reminiscent of an actual Yonko crew. The Vegapunks, the technology of the islands, all of the pacifista eventually. And the Gorosei just strolled up in there and they're like, nah, not a big deal. So look, I'll make a compromise, okay? Let's say that Luffy is an almost Yonko crew, okay? Almost the strength of the Big Mom pirates at full strength, or the Beast pirates at full strength. And I know that this will be super contentious. I know that a lot of you will rage quit and like, nah, Luffy's not there yet. How are you gonna compare him to Big Mom and Kaido? But a lot of it comes from the Strat crew itself. There's a small moment in this chapter from Frankie, and it exists for a reason. He absolutely washes a vice admiral, and the point is to hype up the Strat pirate crew, the main crew itself. Like the Strats, you should compare more to Shanks. When you're talking about Shanks, his main power, it comes from his crew, same as Gold Roger. And when someone like Frankie is at this level, you know that the crew is legit. But all this being said, you have the Gorosei. I really think that based on this, how the Gorosei have conducted themselves, I'm just wondering to myself, who couldn't they have defeated? And I really don't want to sit here and overhype them, only for the next chapter, one of them or all of them getting washed by Frankie or Brook, I don't want to live in that universe. We've already seen what the Giants have done to them, and that's part of the discussion we've been having about them. It's really true that sometimes you give Oda lemons and he gives you orange juice. But real talk, okay, you just can't defeat them. There's no way to defeat them. Until you figure out how to actually inflict damage on them, what the hell are you gonna do? You chop off Jupiter's head, doesn't matter. Throw a building in his mouth, he might as well have said yum. Workery now just can't be damaged. Luffy punched him. Luffy has to be in Gear 5th to do anything, it seems like. I guess it is time to officially retire Gear 3rd. R.I.P. brother. Venus Juro is over here just soloing the entire island. That panel of him at the end, my god, dude. My freaking god. And Saturn's abilities, I feel like he could kill basically anybody. All of the things that are happening right now just reaffirm to me that the Gorosei let the pirate world exist. They allowed them to exist. Because if they really badly wanted to, they could have taken out basically anybody. So yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm a little bit frightened. I might have peed myself just a little bit, but I feel good about it. Unapologetically. We kind of needed that in the story. We need the forces against the Strats to continue to escalate. And right now, in my mind, it's pretty definitive that the Gorosei, as they are, the world government as they are, is a step up from enemies like Kaido. At the very least, until the secret of their immortality or invincibility is revealed. But yeah, with this, you kind of realize just how crazy hard the world government flexed on Whitebeard and Marineford. They really did not care. They really didn't care. Egghead makes that clear. If they cared, the Gorosei would have been there. They didn't care. But look, I think that we can all admit that with the story of One Piece, we really don't know what's about to happen. You might think that you might have an opinion, you might have a preference, you don't freaking know. And to that one guy from the comments who raises his hand is like, no, look, I know. Nay, my fellow, you do not. Nay. Straight up right now, it feels bad. On every front simultaneously. No good feelings. Luffy is now no longer in Gear 5th. Thankfully, the Giants provided some food, so he has his energy back, and I guess that he might be able to go Gear 5th again, but I mean, it's pretty clear that the limits of that power are being reached rapidly. It really doesn't feel like Luffy and the Giants can legitimately fight against what they need to fight against anymore. We have Venus Juro posing spectacularly in front of Bonnie's group. Saturn is now arrived to the Strat ship, which is trying to escape, but can't yet do that. The Strat crew isn't even ready and gathered to get onto it. Meanwhile, Mars is contemplating whether or not he should destroy the lab, which is effectively nuking the entire island. This has straight up gotta be up there as the most stakes ever in the story of One Piece. How do we get out of this? I guess saying that is a disservice to Marineford because the tension of Marineford was on another level. That being said, Man, this is equivalent to Marineford. It's like a weird inversion of it. Or like Sabaody and Marineford mixed together. Instead of the execution of Ace, it's about the execution of Vegapunk. Vegapunk has had the full fury of the world government called upon him because he has defied them. But instead of a Marine Admiral getting called and that's like the big deal, instead it's the entire Gorosei. Rather than Luffy needing to go and rescue Ace, instead he's sort of walked into and needs to defend the Vegapunks. So in this way, the Gorosei are kind of similar to Whitebeard. Whitebeard who showed up in Marineford by appearing out of nowhere from the sea, right? And then they came out of nowhere from Pentacles. Or maybe you can compare the Gorosei's arrival to the Straw Hat's arrival, Luffy's arrival falling from the sky. And whew, it's just a lot. A lot. All of this is absurdly wild. But yeah, I do think that we need to seriously discuss the possibility that the Straw Hats lose. When the comparisons of what is going on is Sabaody and Marineford, right? It's like, those are the two bad vibe arcs, straight up. Do I actually think that they're going to lose? No, I still don't think that. But y'all need to realize that I didn't think that the Straw Hats would lose in Sabaody either. Like, the whole idea of that arc really changed in a one chapter period. Same with Marineford. So if they really were about to lose, you wouldn't really know until we're there. And it's not really a tough theory anymore. In the next chapter, we could be there. But yeah, I suppose I'm just talking. Or as the comments like to tell me, I'm yapping. The main reason that defeat doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now is the unresolved plot threads relating to Egghead itself, which makes it very, very different from Sabaody, as well as Marineford. In both of those arcs, the Straw Hats or Luffy were intending to escape, and that's like the whole vibe. There's no real plan, it's just run. If you want to apply a plan to it, it's run faster and run better, and away from your enemies, Zoro. But in Egghead, we have the Iron Giant. As of the last chapter, it woke up. We didn't see it in this chapter, but we know it's bulldozing, it's rampaging the island somewhere. It's got to come up. It will do something. And even Edison in this chapter, right? Edison has a plan to get the ship to sort of safely arrive on the sea so that they can meet up with the giants. And even Stussy, right? There was a part of this chapter which focused on Stussy, which honestly reminded me a lot of Monet. It's like this weird comparison going on between Vegapunk and Stussy and Doflamingo and Monet, which is definitely not something that I had on my bingo card. But she's waiting to press the button so that the shields can drop at the precise moment. And it doesn't seem like she's going to be doing any adventuring after this. So for all of these things to matter and actually play out, I don't really see how Oda can write the Strats losing here, even though their defeat seems pretty freaking imminent. But that's pretty fascinating by itself, because how? Right now, the circumstances are truly gripping. Like, what a time to be a fan of One Piece. So basically right now, I think that we should be thinking about some sort of get out of jail free card. In one way or in multiple ways simultaneously, please. We need something or someone or many someones to shuffle the deck. So I want to throw out some ideas, and let's just begin with the very obvious Iron Giant, right? We expect, as it knows Joy Boy from the past, it seems to be apologizing in the last chapter, it's probably friendly with the Straw Hats, and so its power level is undecided, but I would scale it using my imagination pretty high. This is tech that is supposed to surpass Vegapunk. By that alone, my expectations are set. But at the same time, I don't really feel like the robot, as of right now, is in a position to help any particular group, especially not every group. Like, as of this second, I don't think that it's a Power Ranger Megazord, comprised of a bunch of smaller robots that could separate. Although you know that Oda's been holding his breath for the right moment to throw that into the story, come on. Like a real Megazord. Of course, the possibility exists that, for instance, in Bonnie's group or the Straw Hat group, they team up to fight the Gorosei that they are about to encounter. I'm not a big fan of this. And I'm curious as to what you guys think about that. I know that people want Straw Hats to have feats like that, but at the same time, I want the Gorosei to not be washed. Is that too much to ask for? Maybe so. Sometimes you don't always get what you want. But for now, I don't really see it. If it does, wow, this whole review will look bad in retrospect. I'm sure that some people might speculate, hey, maybe this is the perfect time for new factions to be introduced into the arc. Maybe Dragon somehow arrives, or Shanks decides, look, gotta go help out my boy, or the Grand Fleet, or something like that. And I feel like at this point, that wouldn't really work. I don't think that would work. That would be cheap. So we need something. It feels like we need something. So I got a kind of crazy idea. Give me a moment to explain it. The cliffhanger that we are left with at the end of this chapter is Mars in Punk Records. He's tracking down this special Dendenmushi that he believes to be transmitting Vegapunk's message. Spoiler alert, I don't think that by destroying this Dendenmushi, the message stops. But I would describe the scene as eerie. Mars seems to be looking at something which he can't quite process. You have this weird bubbling or gurgling sound effect. What I think this is Punk Records itself. We have already been told that Punk Records stores the rest of Vegapunk's brain. Remember, when we saw Vegapunk in the past, his brain just kept growing, his head kept erecting, I guess. Where we see him now, he's basically chopped off his brain and created alters, but I don't think that the majority of his brain is existing within the alters. I think the majority of his brain exists within Punk Records. The bubbling or gurgling sound effect is the brain in its technology juice. To me, this scene clearly sets up some kind of moment, some kind of reveal. And I think what that reveal is that Punk Records is secretly the 7th Vegapunk. Punk Records might actually be the real Stella Vegapunk, because it is the majority of Vegapunk's brain. Why would it not be the Stella? All of the Vegapunks, all of the alters, all connect to Punk Records. It effectively acts as the Stella, consuming all of their knowledge and experiences. So with all this being speculated, it creates the impression that the brain is the wizard behind the curtain. Naturally, it might have more autonomy than you realize, and it may have a role to play in this final battle. So if we have a brain in a jar and it's interesting and it can do something, what could it do? In my mind, with Punk Records being this 7th Vegapunk, it's like Vegapunk is the island of Egghead itself. He is the supercomputer, which controls everything. So throughout this arc, we've seen some crazy technology from the Egghead island itself, which is visually very interesting, but actually hasn't performed a legitimate role in the story. And the thing I actually want to talk about is a wall from pretty much the moment that the Strats met the Vegapunks. There was this wall that seemed like a real wall, and then they could walk through it, and then they turned around and suddenly this wall was solid, which is pretty fantastic tech. It's basically like a hologram, but also given substance. And I phrase that very specifically because earlier in the arc, it was just a visual detail, but it existed. There was giant holographic monsters, which Atlas was fighting for some reason. It's been a thought in my brain for a while that it may be possible for Vegapunk to turn these holograms into actual combatant monsters. Make virtual reality into actual reality, at least on the island itself. And honestly, if you think about it, how crazy fitting would that be for Vegapunk, the Stella, which is actually the brain, to do this against the Gorosei, who are kind of the same thing. Like, if you make holographic entities real, then how do you kill them? You can't really kill them because they're not really real, which is the definite vibe of the Gorosei. Anyway, you have to agree with me, right, that something like this occurring would be visually spectacular. It would be awesome. It would be a way for Vegapunk, the brain, to be on every battlefield simultaneously, be able to influence, distract the Gorosei, to allow the Strats the ability to escape the island, which seems like something that needs to occur now, right now. It would just make a ton of sense. But either way, I really do think that the brain is an actual organism that can communicate, and it's got to do something, like, based on the end of this chapter. That's my read of what's going on. I really just don't see Mars in the next chapter. In Punk Records, just looking at the brain, which is just a brain, can't communicate it with it at all, destroys the Dinamushi, nothing happens, destroys the brain, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, you need a moment. What could that moment be? But yeah, it really does feel like that Egghead does not have many chapters left. There might be a lot of content packed into the time remaining, especially if we pan to Vegapunk's message, if it relates to the Revolutionary Army at all, these sorts of things, that would take up a lot of screen time. But for the actual events on Egghead, I feel like the Straw Hats are like seconds to minutes away from needing to leave the island. So Luffy, Dory, and Brogy basically need to teleport to where the rest of the Strats are, or the Giant's ship. How they're going to do that, I'm not entirely sure. It could be the giant robot, or it could be if holograms become reality and they just fly there, who knows, okay? But they need to do that now. We didn't see Zoro or Jinbei in the chapter. I don't think that we saw Sanji either, but I think that the reason that they weren't shown is because they are pretty close to where they need to be. So we're going to see, in the next time that we see them, encountering the Goroseis, which are encountering the factions. And we could see an interaction there, a fight, maybe Zoro briefly against Nustro. That seems totally in play for me. But I don't think that it can be a real battle because they need to go. I have no idea what Edison's plans are, but I would expect the Thousand Sunny group to hit Coup de Burst now. Like, you see a Gorosei, you press the button, and you just, hopefully it goes well. Edison will save the day, and then suddenly the Thousand Sunny is on or next to the giant ship. Then at this point, the arc is effectively over, and you are just praying that the Gorosei are distracted and can't follow you. But yeah, that's basically how I see this playing out, but of course it could go in many different directions, and I'm really excited to see how Oda decides to finish this. Not even mentioning Vegapunk's message, which obviously everybody has been excited for over a month now. Is everyone still sane after the break? But I have to say, my general take is that I appreciate when there is more One Piece, but at the same time, with the events that are going on here, I was hoping that everything would be settled relatively quickly. And I know a lot of people freaked out when we got this countdown that, oh no, one chapter is suddenly going to become 10 chapters, and that may still be the case. But we've really progressed through the countdown much faster than I think anybody really anticipated. Like, by the end of this chapter, we have 1 minute left, and it just flew by. So yeah, honestly pretty thankful for that. Give me Vegapunk's message. But anyway, is there anything else that I really want to discuss from this chapter? I kind of want Kaku to live a happy life after this. No matter where he shows up in the story, no matter what evil things he might be doing, whether it's in Eni's lobby or now, I just like that dude. Why did Oda do that? But I feel like Kaku seeing Stussie's resolve, she's making a choice to sacrifice herself for Vegapunk out of love. For her creator or whatever, we're not even going to talk about how the difference between Stussy and Miss Bakken, wow, wildly different. That being said, Kaku's there to see it, and I wonder if it would have some effect on him. And I could kind of see Stussy not dying in this arc, even if that might be implied or that we might be left with that impression, and instead Kaku saves her. I just feel like Kaku, after everything that he has experienced, this is the perfect time for him to disappear. Essentially fake his own death, and then live happily ever after. But yeah, I guess that's really it. That's what I had to say. We are at the climax, boys, and it is now time to simply enjoy. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed, just share your thoughts. If you're curious, check out my book, The Booms, link in the description. If you guys have time to read it, please leave a review. Let other people know what you thought about it. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.